Welcome to the Lucky Orange Show, where we teach you how to unlock the potential of raw data and shape it into stories that grow your business faster. Let's get into today's conversation.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Lucky Orange Show. As you can notice, if you're watching the video, Deb's got a Lucky Orange shirt on, Tina's here, Molly's here, Nick's here. This isn't your grandpa's Lucky Orange Show. This is a special edition, kind of in between episode. Usually what we're doing on the show is talking all about helping you make better use out of all that data you're collecting. And in some ways, we might be doing that today, but we're talking about Shopify editions. All of these folks on the call today went to editions. They gathered in Toronto and they partied without me. And that's fine. Maybe another year, maybe another time we'll make it connect. So if you don't know about Shopify editions, it's kind of their show. It's kind of their show and tell, where they come out with all their new features, all their new ideas. There's workshops, there's sessions, there's Shopify employees there in the wild, so you can corner them and ask them questions. And if you were there, you might have noticed some of the trends that we're going to be talking about today. And if you weren't, this should be helpful if you're in the ecosystem anywhere to keep an eye on how things are changing, because they're always changing and Shopify is a big moving beast. So let's just start with something surprising, game-changing. What is something, Tina, we'll start with you, that surprised you, that felt game-changing, an idea, an app that you came across that really made you say, huh, that's interesting?
Yeah, we're starting with the hard question.
What is the world-changing idea that happened?
Yes, yeah, what's going to change the ecosystem for good? You know what? Okay, so I attended Shopify's Enterprise Talk, which was basically about how they're focusing on enterprise businesses and how, as an app partner, what you can be doing to kind of stay top of mind for Shopify to support them in that goal. And they shared a lot about the industries that they're focusing on now for enterprise. And this was surprising to me because I'm thinking, like, oh, apparel, cosmetics, like there's Ilia Beauty, all of that. No, they're starting to expand into nonprofit, education, and manufacturing were three that I was like, okay, interesting. I never would have expected Shopify to start supporting these like kind of non-e-commerce, if you will, verticals. So that kind of took me back. And even the people speaking were like, is anyone in the room surprised? And we're all like, yes. And they're like, yeah, us too, actually. Now let's talk about it. And I was like, okay. So once they explained it, I was like, okay, it makes sense. There's only so much in the e-commerce space that you can cover. So I do get why they're doing it, but I wasn't necessarily expecting Shopify to kind of make that direction, I guess.
I think it's interesting because, Tina, I felt like Shopify, and I think it's hard for big companies of Shopify's scale and size to be able to like narrow in a niche and a focus and try not to be, because I know their head of product was like, we're trying to be everything to everyone, but then we try to go super narrow and super, like B2B or, niche markets. And then they try to narrow in. And I feel like they always revert back to kind of their e-commerce roots. But I think just like a lot of companies, they're trying to find their ICP and saying, okay, but we've tapped out the marketplace here, or there's no more white space left for us to gather. So it's always interesting for me to hear where Shopify thinks they're going next. But then again, all of their development, a lot of their resources continue to fall back to e-commerce focused, products, and how are they developing their SKU catalogs and all the different things like that. So it was really just interesting for me to hear that them mention things like B2B, the nonprofit, those sorts of things, but yet everything on their green path, as they kept referencing it, was related to e-commerce and e-commerce development. So it kind of is, from an app developer perspective, and Deb, I don't know if you feel this way, kind of a little bit of a mixed message too, because it's like, okay, we're, going down these paths. You guys should follow us here too. But then all the development releases we have are related to e-commerce. So we're not really doubling down on any of those other areas. Something that I just found really interesting at the event to see kind of come to fruition there.
Yeah.
And it felt like the push towards that too maybe stemmed from some frustration that they've been experiencing with maybe some of those market groups, and trying to allow them to either feel more comfortable in the ecosystem, or at least inform them that there is a path going forward for those types of users, but maybe not necessarily fully fleshed out yet. It seemed like it was more, we want to touch on this because we've heard the frustrations here, but don't necessarily have an answer right away. So that's kind of what I got, why a lot of those pushes towards those markets we weren't expecting kind of came from.
Yeah, I think like to me, the vibe I was getting from that whole talk was like they were very openly admitting that, hey, we don't really understand these spaces very well. And so, like, if you're an app developer who does have experience in these spaces and you can bring a solution forward that helps with like B2B subscriptions or, you know, nonprofit things or education, all of that, then we want to hear from you because this is a new area for us. We don't know how to navigate it. So if you can help us navigate it, then we're going to basically refer your app more often to like, you know, they're working with like Girl Guides of Canada, apparently. I don't know if I'm allowed to make that, but they did mention that. So like they have some really big enterprise businesses in these sectors. And yeah, I kind of was getting the vibe that they're like, we don't know how to navigate this and we want our app partners to help. And if you can help, we're going to refer you. So it was like interesting, but also a little self-serving, I guess I would say too.
Thoughts, but not for this call. So we'll just leave it with that.
And maybe by nature, I mean,
you wonder when you're a publicly traded company, sometimes you wonder if the message is for the partners or if the message is for the investors. I'll just kind of like leave it at that, and we can move on.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, 1,000%, Deb.
When you look at the roadmap, I mean, by nature, those other business types, the website and everything surrounding the website might be a little simpler. And an e-commerce website is kind of a beast, especially at scale. And so a nonprofit website, a B2B website, you've got some pages, you have a couple forms, there's systems surrounding it, but the stuff that would touch your Shopify admin, your Shopify instance might be slightly simpler. So you're right, totally right that they might just be saying, let's float this out there and get people to start building around the idea. But maybe there's something too. It's just like, hey, did you know that you can build a website for this type of business on Shopify? So like sometimes we will even say, hey, did you know if you're a .edu education, you can build it, you can use Lucky Orange in your site. It's not a new thing. It's not something that we're building towards, but people just don't think about it. They don't think about Shopify as something for that type of thing. I know, Nick, you were busy in a lot of sessions while Molly was gallivanting around, shaking hands and signing autographs. Was there anything that stood out to you other than what we've talked about as far as ideas or apps or anything that you saw that was particularly interesting?
Yeah, I mean, my focus was primarily around a lot of the Polaris stuff and built for Shopify stuff, and so that's where I spent put a lot of my focus. I was really surprised to see Shopify kind of owning the pitfalls or kind of recognize the downsides of Polaris and kind of where they've fallen short. And so a lot of the maybe not new ideas, but the cool stuff that I was really interested about that I appreciated, at least that they talked about, was just the addressing the serious problems surrounding some of those platforms, whether that was specifically built for Shopify or Polaris. One of the cooler ones that I saw that I think really is going to solve a lot of issues for app developers is this new unified Polaris, trying to bring kind of the whole Polaris system across all Shopify surfaces, because I think that's been our biggest issue going into app development, has just been trying to understand how these individual Shopify surfaces play together. And up until now, they really didn't play nicely together. And I think they've kind of recognized that and addressed that and kind of owned up to it and are starting to work towards a more unified system. So that alone was really, really great to see, just kind of owning that and kind of acknowledging we know that this hasn't been consistent and we know it's been frustrating to manage, and trying to at least address that. Now, I don't know if all of their solutions are going to be put in place right away to fix these things, but they had a lot of stuff that would immediately solve these issues for everybody there.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, Deb and Tina, have you been to Editions before this year? I believe you have,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of, as is with the nature of these sort of conferences and events, there's a lot of ideas that get floated. Obviously, we need follow through on some of these things, and they need to show up. Have you seen things in the past fall flat after Editions, or
Yes.
do we usually see promises made good? I think that's something people need to think about. I mean, it's marketing at the end of the day, these sort of events. So kind of along those lines, are there, Deb, any kind of like hallway conversations you had? I know you had a great app listing teardown session, and I think Molly was in the room
Oh my
for that
gosh,
as
it
well.
was so good. It was like the realest thing I've like of all the sessions. Deb was just like, no nonsense, not to plug that and interrupt Deb's question, but just like the no nonsense, I think these conferences need more of. And that's what Deb's session provided, is just like, no nonsense. We're not, and Nick was kind of alluding it too, but not to beat around the bush. These are the real things. These are, people want the to-do list, right? The takeaway of what they can actually do. And a session like Deb's where they actually did real life teardowns, she actually works with these apps all the time. Those things matter. And so if anyone listening from Shopify is out there, those things matter. The people want more of that. Not to interrupt Deb, but
No, thank you. That's good feedback. Yeah, I mean, going back to like, from the hallway conversation to like the ideas that I felt like I took away is the concentration on themes this year, I think, was a lot larger than in past years. I've been to every single partner conference that they've had, and there was a huge emphasis on horizons this year. And my takeaway on that was going back to simplicity. So Shopify started as like a more of like a plug and play solution for e-commerce where you can get up and running really quickly. You don't need a lot of development resources. And then over the years, things got really, really expanded with like headless commerce and, building out things and using like this crazy code and, the flexibility that it offered developers. And now I feel like it's sort of the return back to simplicity of like, you can even create a website or an e-commerce store on Shopify using these Horizon themes. And, through AI, like even have them write code for you to do things. So that was kind of cool to see like, okay, we're going back to our roots and taking it to a place that anybody could do it. Cause I think that's what made me fall in love with Shopify is anybody could do it. A marketer can get up and running. They don't need to rely on development resources. And although if you want that flexibility and agility, you have that available to you. But if you just like are a small shop and want to like, build your little jewelry store out of like some no town in Minnesota, like you could do that without a lot of friction. So I like that.
Sorry, rural Minnesota. Deb's throwing shade.
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of really good opportunity I love Minnesota, and I think there's a huge like artisan community, of people that want to be able to carve out their own paths. And that's now
totally. I wonder if there's some connection there between that back to the basics and the idea that you can build on Shopify and those other spaces as a nonprofit, as a B2B, whatever it is. It's like we're arming the rebels, and the rebels happen to not just be e-commerce. So there might be something there where it's trying to make it easier. It expands, the ecosystem expands. There's all these apps, there's all these Shopify Plus, there's so many different ways to go about it. But at the end of the day, they can help you. They can make it really easy. The themes, the templates, and all of that really does that.
See, that's not to interrupt, Sean, but that's where I kind of struggle with Shopify and these events overall, is because they're, like Deb said, they're going back to the horizons and anyone can do it and it's simple and it's plug and play. Okay, well, to me, that does skew rural Minnesota jewelry maker, candle maker, soap maker. But yet they're saying, okay, we're big on B2B. We're going up market to Shopify Plus. We're supporting these Shopify Plus brands, go big or go home type of thing with that. Yet the themes we're developing on are made for the little guys. So it's just the inconsistency of the messaging sometimes I feel like really comes to a head at an event like this, because you get emails and you see their marketing, but when they're forced to bring it all together and say it all at the same time, you're kind of like, where does that leave me? And maybe that's just from one app developer side. And Tina, I know obviously sitting on the Simple Bundle side, and Deb, you work with all these apps if you guys feel that way, but I just feel like it's so mixed message sometimes, and I'm hard to know where to put my next foot in front of the other.
Yeah. I mean, I think the expansion of I guess the positive side of it is like the expansion of opportunity, especially as we're going into uncertainty with the economy and people losing jobs and things like that. And so, from a positive standpoint, I'm looking at it like, hey, they're creating opportunity for people that might not have it. Going back to the pandemic times where, development shops were all going crazy trying to build stuff really quickly, because it was those times where things were very much in the customizable or headless or zone. And so like with the uncertainty of things ahead, it's kind of like, okay, well, you have options now within Shopify. So I'll take that away, I guess, from it.
Yeah. one thing you said, Molly, that really like struck me was the no bullshit sort of conference. And like Deb and I were at Mantle's tectonic
TikTok.
event right before Editions, and like to me, that event had more of that no bullshit vibe than Shopify's did this year. And this is something that like Deb and I had actually talked about a little bit like this week, was just like how different Editions felt this year compared to even last year. And I did feel like Editions this year was a little bit more like buttoned up, like we're not going to say too many things, like it's a lot of hush hush, like there's certain key messages we want across and that's like all we want people to talk about. And then you go to like Mantel's event and people are like, yeah, like this is shit, or like, you know, people are just like open and honest about feedback and where the space is going and like what you should do. Whereas I felt like it was more teasers at Editions, but like still
Yes.
not giving you the full story on how to be successful with Shopify.
It felt less partner centric and more like where Tectonic felt very like partner kumbaya, like we're all in this together, like we're collaborating, let's all like blur the lines and work together. This felt like you're standing in line, you can't get into this thing. There's lots of disparity in the messaging, things like that. So yeah, sorry Shopify, we're not trying to shade you. We love you very
No,
much.
I think it's, I mean, I think that they have always, it feels like they care about the ecosystem because it serves them really well to support the ecosystem. And so I'm sure that there are feedback loops happening, and Harley's obviously going to watch this. Toby's obviously going to watch this. So
Obviously.
they'll hear it. I mean, I tried to get him on, you guys, and he didn't answer
I saw that. Yeah.
he didn't
Next
answer my
time,
tag.
Harley.
Yeah.
He was busy.
I know that there was a sick denim focused party. And so kind of a hard left turn here. We'll get back to the event. I do want to talk about the event specifically and the logistics and how that all went. But other than like how cool your guys' outfits were, Tina and Molly, were there any other conversations that were happening at that event or otherwise kind of hallway chatter that we haven't hit on yet that you think is worth bringing up?
Well, I think and Nick, I'll actually probably let you tell this story of I was letting Nick watch my drink while I went to the bathroom because, safety in numbers, buddy system. But Nick, do you want to share kind of with Sean how Bradley had reached out with, you should reach out to these guys, and then they kind of came together and we found them? I think it's a cool
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, going into this event, Bradley had reached out and kind of asked if we had I guess it was Shopify specific partner for
A/B testing.
A/B testing. Sorry, I was going
And
to
to
say
be
heat maps.
clear,
Yeah,
everyone,
A/B testing.
Bradley's our director of client services on our side for those of you listening. So he's constantly looking for ways to make our customers happy.
Yeah, and so he was looking into that space, trying to find some new partners for A/B testing based off of some conversations he had with some of our users. And he had reached out and sent even a example of an app called Shoplift over Molly's way, and we hadn't really looked at it yet. It was coming through, but as Molly said, I was standing there watching our drinks, just kind of hanging out in the gallery space, and someone walked up to me out of the bathroom and goes, "Hey, is that my drink there sitting in front of you?" And it was mine. And so I was joking with him and kind of just started a conversation, and then he noticed my shirt and was kind of like, "Oh, wait, you're with Lucky Orange." And we started talking and he was explaining how he knew us. And turns out they were with Shoplift. And that was actually who Bradley had sent over, and we weren't even aware of it yet. And so we got talking, and it turned into a really great conversation of them being well aware of us and looking to potentially create a new partnership that hadn't been established yet. And so right away, just like the connections made just from a simple conversation of drinks being guarded from the bathroom turned into a potential partnership with an app that we both know can provide value both ways, whether versus with us providing them value and vice versa, them providing us value into our tools. So great way to start a connection. And we didn't even know that we were supposed to be on the lookout for Shoplift yet. And they just kind of stumbled upon us, and natural conversation went from there, and we ran into them a few other times throughout the event. So nice to make friends that way, but then also nice to make new partnerships.
Who says drinking is all bad? There's got to be something in there that's positive for you if it's positive for your business and not your health. That's
Yeah, I don't know if
fine.
the moral of the story there is to hang outside of the bathrooms and wait for people that look interesting to come out, or
Yeah. Yeah.
just to start new conversations.
If
Bathroom's probably not the best place to have those conversations, but
if we ever sponsor another conference, we'll put the banner right outside the bathrooms, and Nick can just stand there
we'll have
and
a waiting area. Yeah, there'll
talk to
be a roped
people.
off area right outside the bathrooms for partnerships.
That's
Yeah.
Honestly think that is the power of going to these things every year, is those connections that you're going to make along the way, whether you're just like going to be friends because you have shared interests, or there are business opportunities, and you never know. Like, fast forward 5 years, I have someone like trying to sponsor my newsletter that I met in 2018, so it's like the newsletter was never even like a conceived idea, and then we were just like friends all this time. And then, so you never know, I guess, is really the moral of
Yeah.
the story. And if you go with authenticity and you're just going to have a good time, and like you were there just like, hey, I'm just watching Molly's drink, and then it turned into possibly a business opportunity. It's like, that's the beauty of this.
I was just gonna say, like, out of everything, like, Shopify's built this community of really
Totally.
awesome people. And that's something I have always like appreciated Shopify for, because I tell everyone that doesn't work in this industry how amazing this industry really is and how awesome the people are. And like, going to a conference actually gives me energy, whereas I feel like if I was in any other industry, I would not get energized by going to a conference as like an introverted person who doesn't want to leave my house. But like, the Shopify space is just so much fun. It's so kind. And one piece of feedback, or one thing I've learned actually from a client of mine who is like so good at partnerships, he's been in it for years, is these things like conferences are what you make of them, not what they deliver to you. And I think that's like one thing, I guess, for myself to keep in mind with like additions is like, obviously there's things that I think can be improved, but like at the end of the day, it's like how you kind of, I guess, take the plate that's given to you and make the most out of it. And I think we did a good job of that last week, Deb, where like we went to smaller things, we went to larger things, we went to Tectonic, we went to additions. Like, we really had a full menu of like all the sort of things you could possibly achieve in one, short week of a conference. So yeah, at the end of the day, like, I think that Shopify has just created this amazing, amazing community, and I'm very thankful to be part of it.
I think it's
I
great.
mean, I think not to piggyback on what everyone else is saying, but just to double down on what everyone's saying is there's a lot of other ecosystems you could be a part of. And at Lucky Orange, we have other, relationships with other platforms. And I'm not going to name those specifically, but like, I have been to their events and I have done the things. Yes. And I have done the things, and Shopify's ecosystem and partnerships is unlike any world-class, unlike anywhere in the world. And yeah, we may have feedback for them on how they run in their events, and we may have feedback for them on how they release their, technology updates, and our engineers may have complaints, and we may have questions about how they run their, app marketplace. All of those things can and are true, but that doesn't change the fact that they have built a world-class ecosystem. They continue to invest in it. And again, whether the partnership event was exactly what I wanted it to be or not, they continue to invest in it in a real and meaningful way. And so I think that's the difference from Shopify, from all the other ecosystems that I'm a part of and that we sit a part of, is their investment and their commitment. Again, we may agree and disagree with how they do it, but it doesn't change the fact that they're invested in committing and growing their ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, one of the coolest things that I took away was we're at the welcome party at the Shopify offices on Thursday evening, and I'm talking with one of my clients, and he's wearing this like varsity jacket with a Built for Shopify diamond. And he's like, I was walking in and someone grabbed me and pulled me upstairs. And the next thing you know, Harley's in the room and they're presenting me with this jacket and telling us that like, we're one of the best Shopify apps for Built for Shopify. And it was like a complete shock and surprise. And those moments to be captured like that is just like, wow, like what other ecosystem is going to do that? Where like Harley's like, and they surprise all these apps with this like cool jacket they can wear and take home with them. And I don't know, just stuff like that makes it really cool, I think.
Another reason to be Built for Shopify. Geez, I didn't know we were giving out cool jackets.
There are many, and I think that's something we should talk about, throughout this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of going to go there about things that keep people up at night. I know that Built for Shopify might keep Nick up at night right now. He's deep in the thick of it with our engineering team, and Molly is just relentlessly driving meetings and keeping them going. Kind of open to anybody. Is there anything that you saw happening or talked about that kind of keeps you up at night? Things that you're thinking about, and maybe a piece of advice of ways that people could prepare or think about this as it continues to happen.
Yeah.
Deb, your hand was raised.
Oh yeah. No, I want to talk about the Build for Shopify stuff because I think
Yeah.
that, I was having a lot of conversations with apps about the subject at editions, and some were still skeptical on like whether or not they should make the investment. And I
Yeah.
had like a really big conversation with an app that was like, well, I could build, out features that our customers could benefit from, and my MRR could rise that way. And our app is still built outside of native Shopify and all this kind of stuff. And there were just like red flags like flying all over the place when he was telling me this. And I was like, you're really thinking short-term gain versus long-term stability. And Shopify, in no uncertain circumstances, are telling you that you need to be built for Shopify without actually telling you that you need to be built for Shopify. And they're doing it in every which way possible. So if you're just like ignoring these signs, you're really like living in a world of denial. Like it makes me worried for when you do have to kind of move in that direction, like how far behind you are going to be, and also like how much opportunity you're leaving on the table by not going in that direction. I'm not trying to scare you guys. You guys are obviously moving in that direction. So I commend you on that. And anyone who's listening to this, like you need to do it. Like, it's not even like, oh, should we make no, like you do need to do it. It's whether you do it now or you do it later. And along the way, you're going to like leave some opportunity on the table, or anything from like, in my talk that I did with the two of the people that work at Shopify on the App Store, saying like, specifically, you will not be considered for any of our guides or any of like the special opportunities within the App Store if you're not built for Shopify. So like, that's a hint, and then the ads, like ad targeting, you can't do a bunch of things if you're not built for Shopify. Another hint, so the signs are everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I glad you said try not to scare anyone. No, please scare them. They need to be scared because I have a few clients who haven't done it, and I've been pushing it on them a little bit for the last year because I've seen Simple Bundles go through the process, and Simple Bundles was actually one of the first bundling apps to get built for Shopify, and it was a tremendous help with us like getting bumped up to the first spot with like all of our target keywords in the app listing, and then like growth just went off after that point, right? Now there's a lot of bundling apps with built for Shopify, so the competition with like the rankings and everything is back to what it was, but we like had a solid year where we were one of the only ones, and we saw like so much growth from that. And then again, like you said, Deb, there's been so many opportunities. Like we've got to work with the shop team on like the shop app, and we were again one of the first bundling apps to create a shop mini so that brands that are selling on the shop app could also create bundles on their landing pages there. Those opportunities come from like that close collaboration we have with Shopify now that we've like done these things. And then Deb is always like, for some reason, the first to catch this every single time, but she'll like message me and be like, oh, Simple Bundles is like featured today on like the Shopify App Store. I don't know how you catch it every single time, Deb, but like it's like the first message I'll get whenever it happens. But it's happened many times in like the last couple of years since we've had like built for Shopify too. So anyway, just to really reiterate how important
what does the resistance seem to be there? I mean, I know there's a level of difficulty in time and resources to become built for Shopify. Is that the sole ground that people stand on to say we're not going to do this?
Especially if your app's built outside of native Shopify, then there's a lot more hurdle because you're having to rebuild the app from scratch. So that's like a whole situation. And you think about the investment that you put in, and it's hard. It's almost like, you buy a new house from the ground up and you build it, and then you hate it and you want to move into another house and you lose a bunch of money. It's like one of those kind of things where you're like, oh, that hurt. Oh, that's going to hurt. But the foundation built it on is just not stable, and you need to move because there's going to be like a landslide and you're going to lose your house. So sorry, go ahead.
It felt like that was the balance of this event, really, was kind of having the two sides of, you had the business like implications in terms of what are the benefits of being built for Shopify status, but then you had Shopify dev teams recognizing that they haven't done a great job of making it easier to become to get built for Shopify status or maintain that status with your app. And so I think there's also just a lot of unanswered questions still from a lot of different apps. I think some apps, it makes a lot more sense than others. And those apps sitting there that say, well, this just, I don't fit into this box that these other built for Shopify apps do. I don't have the same requirements, or my users don't use my app in the same way that, another app would be used. How do I fit in here? And I think a lot of those things just haven't been answered yet. And I think there was a bit of a goal with additions to try and address some of those things. And if maybe not providing answers, at least letting those people know, like, we are aware of these things and that we're trying to unify this process and make it easier to get there. But the biggest thing that I kept hearing over and over again was just the maintaining built for Shopify status once it was received, at least in the earlier days. Like that, at least this past year, a lot of people have struggled with maintaining it because of the new things rolling out, the documentation that supports those things, the amount of work that goes into that. Either they don't have the resources for that, or they just don't know how and aren't able to get answers from whether that's Shopify or other apps that they're having to lean on to kind of inform their process. I think that was the biggest struggle that I heard from a lot of people, was just maintaining that status this past year.
Yeah, that is a thing.
I will say too, just in this conversation, one of the conversations that kept coming up for me, and I by no means think Lucky Orange is the best app on the app marketplace. I think we're pretty darn good, and I'm pretty proud of the work that we've done. Yeah, repping it, Deb. And we did get lucky at the beginning that our founders, kind of said Shopify is something we're going to invest in. We're going to build an app and we're going to stick with it. And that predates me. But one of the things I will say about being the first, being, the yes people, that's what works. When people come to me and they're like, how do you guys get featured in this guide? Or how do you guys, even get your partner manager to respond? Or how do you guys get an invite to this event? It's because we say yes. And it's because we're the first to adopt it. And that is what gets you in the door. It's not that Shopify is just out of the love of their heart, as much as they say they're for the merchants and what's best for the merchants. They want to work with people that are easy to work with and that say yes to them and that are along the ride with them. So we've done stuff with like the checkout, the web pixel and the checkout extensibility stuff. They came to us with some half put together documentation and said, hey, you guys want to ride with us and be the first ones to be able to track checkout? And we said, yeah, this is documentation's kind of incomplete, but we wrote the documentation alongside of them. We tested it for them. We said yes. Did it take time? Did it take resources? Did it take investment on our part? 1,000%. And are those opportunities always going to hit? No, but we are seeing an influx of dozens of Shopify Plus brands coming to us every month with big accounts because, oh, you guys are the first ones, the only ones to track checkout. Again, deviating a little bit from built for Shopify, and that's taking us a little bit longer and a little bit more momentum, but be the first one to say yes, be there alongside of them. Don't be the ones that are always like, oh, your documentation sucks. This isn't going to work. Well, of course it does. If you guys have ever written documentation, it's hard to write. Like even big companies have trouble with that. So that's kind of like my one takeaway from the partnership event. And everyone's like, oh, I see. Like to what you guys were saying about conferences are what you put into that. Relationships with people like Shopify are what you put into it. And they're not just going to feature you because you're pretty and, help merchants and you have a good value prop with them. It's because you say yes and you're willing to build and grow alongside of them too.
Yeah, I mean, partnerships take work. That's the whole thing about it. Totally. You can't expect somebody to do the whole work and then you're just riding on the coattails of it. Like a partnership is a 50-50 arrangement and you have to give in as much as you're taking. And then the benefits are really good for both of you because you're both going to ride that wave as much as possible. Going back to Built for Shopify, something that I didn't mention before that I think is kind of important to say is I've done a couple of interviews for case studies with merchants and they've told me with no uncertain circumstances said like, I only choose apps that are built for Shopify because it's an extra layer of credibility. It also because it's native within Shopify, it feels like familiar to me. And so I like that. And also it tells me that they're continuing to develop because they have to stay on top of that. And so for me, that adds that credibility or that trust factor that they're going to continue to develop on the backs of Shopify. So there's longevity there for us. So
it's so powerful. Yeah. I mean, that's like the ultimate yes. For Shopify to say we need to keep encouraging people to do this is on both sides of the equation, people are recognizing the value and the credibility that it's providing for people. I'm really interested to see how our app shakes out and Built for Shopify. It's looking, really solid. These guys are working their tails off. So super, super excited. I think we've made a lot of really, really good notes about things we've overheard and trends. I'll throw this out to kind of anybody who has something to add to it. When we take these away and look at our own work, when we're looking at Lucky Orange, obviously we're talking about Built for Shopify for right now, but a lot of other things too. What's something that you're changing about the way you think about Shopify, or that's immediately shifting kind of how you think about your relationship with them? I know, Molly, you have calls with them regularly. I'm sure you guys do as well. But what's something that you're taking away that's changing how you think about Shopify?
That's a really good question.
Okay, go.
Okay.
Everybody got one.
Well, I mean, I obviously had the best opportunity because I was talking with people that work within the Shopify App Store during my talk. So like I developed that relationship ahead of time. But if I didn't have that, they really made themselves accessible this year in a way that I feel like is more than ever before. It's like before you'd kind of run into people, or maybe you'd go to like a specific area and be able to ask questions. But I feel like this year felt more like you can develop a relationship with us and you can contact us afterwards. And to like what Molly was saying is like really partner with them on giving feedback loops, giving suggestions, offering your help in any kind of way regarding your app with them, and like partnering on things. So for me, that felt like the biggest takeaway of this year.
Yeah. So for me, one thing that I felt like they did a good job of this year was bringing light to certain programs that they have that I actually didn't know really existed. So again, like this is one of the talks that I had attended where it was about co-marketing and partnering with Shopify. And I had gone to that one because there's definitely like been situations, at previous companies where it's been hard to get Shopify involved because there's a lot of red tape, obviously, corporation, PR, all that kind of stuff. But this whole talk was about how they have actually like co-sponsored events with certain partners. They've done marketing campaigns, like reports, and like a whole like year-long campaign with certain partners. And they like kind of gave the, I guess, key to the kingdom in that talk on like, here's how to pitch us, here's what we want to do, here's what we expect from our partners. And like, if you deliver these things to us, we're so happy to get involved, and we're happy to even like pay a huge chunk of the cost of it as your partners, and like, let's go to market together. And I was like, that was really, really refreshing to hear, because it's always seemed like very like difficult to partner with Shopify. Like, you kind of have to be like in the in crowd maybe to like partner with them. But this was very clear to me that that's not the case, and that they want to work with more partners. It's just like people maybe necessarily didn't know how to go about doing that. So I thought that talk was really helpful, just to actually like hear, okay, if I want to do an event with Shopify, or I want to do a report with them, here's exactly what I need to do step by step to get their buy-in, and then we can do some really cool stuff together, which was kind of nice to see.
Molly, did you have something there?
Well, I think that the keys to the kingdom and the access, one of the things, elephant in the room, I think going into this, at least for us, was, and Deb mentioned that in her app collective, was the review purge, as we like to say it, or what was going. And I thought it was so funny that we went into the event and I was like, oh, they shot their shot, man. Like they're getting ready to get all these app developers together, and they went through this review purge. I was like, good on them. I guess they're going to be ready for the fire. And I know, Deb, in your session, you fielded questions, and I thought you did a good job about refocusing, like, here's what we're talking about. But Nick and I actually went down and spent some time, with the app and growth booth, to the point of making themselves successful. And we were just like, hey, we're trying to understand moving forward what we can do to do better on reviews, right? To make sure that our reviews are meaningful and they're valuable, and they're what you guys are looking for as a good partner. And so I'm with Deb. We weren't like pissed off or pitchforks or angry. Like, they're trying to clean up the marketplace. They're trying to do right by it and get the shady people that are doing the shady things out of there. And you saw that reflected. You saw the apps that were getting shady reviews at, not following the guidelines. Theirs went down 70-80%. And yeah, we took a hit too of like 30 to 40%, but it was for all the right reasons. And Nick and I went up and asked them, we're like, can you just give us an idea? It was just like, kind of vague messaging in your emails. And they're like, and I'm not big on gatekeeping this. So I'm like, everyone should hear this. They told us the biggest thing is the merchant value. So has the merchant been on Shopify for a long time? That's leaving the review. Are they on a Shopify free trial? Are they a smaller? What's their level of GMV? All those different things. The merchant value and how big and good and reliable and how long the merchant's been with Shopify is the most important thing. And I think that was really telling because it tells me no one can game that, right? You can't game that system. Shopify saying, hey, you can't make the merchant a better and more quality merchant than they are to leave the review. Now you can go target better, more quality merchants, but you can't game that. And that's something to try to make their reviews more pure that I thought was a big takeaway and something that I was like, man, I wish I would have just said that in the email. But, I went and asked the questions and Nick and I had the conversations, and I think it led to us having a good conversation and more clarity for us moving forward long term.
And that goes back to your ICP. I mean, your customer base is going to be a store that's been around for a hot minute and is really trying to understand their traffic. And so, you're not going to take the hit that a drop shipping company is going to be taking because your ICP already says like the type of merchant that we're going after that we really want to like grow our LTV with or MRR with or LTV with is the one that's going to be around for a hot minute anyway, and it's going to get the most benefit out of our app.
I want to kind of wrap by talking about the event itself from like a logistical standpoint. And obviously it sounds like there were a bunch of different paths. And I think it's been really interesting to hear you guys talk about how approaching it more intentionally and being more of a participant will drive a lot of value. I see in-person events continue to evolve. Some of the ones that have caught a lot of fire, at least in the B2B marketing space, are very small, very curated. Things like Spring by Winter and EXL Live, both in Austin, very small, a lot of small roundtable conversations. Shopify exists in almost every way at such a huge scale. So it might be harder to support those and run 50 separate events. So I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts on how this event logistically worked and how it might be improved or changed, or if it's still even serving the community in the way that it needs to. I know we've talked about the connections outside of the bathrooms and challenging people with questions and things that should be happening within the ecosystem. But is this the right type of event? And is this the type of thing that they could continue to evolve and improve over time? Or is it something that needs to be completely reworked? Anyone?
Happy to start.
Yeah, let it rip.
Yeah, so a couple things on my end for sure. I mean, first off, I love that they had the biz track versus like dev track this year. I think this was the first year that they did that. It definitely wasn't a thing last year. So it was kind of nice just to like, apologies for my Slack. It was kind of nice just to know like who else is on the biz track and like know that there's actually, certain talks or panels and whatnot that are specifically geared towards people in like partnerships marketing. Because last year, obviously not a developer, not a technical person myself. Last year I didn't go to a lot of the talks because most of them were geared towards that. So it was nice that there were options. And I did, like I said, like I did love the talks that I went to from the Shopify team about going enterprise and then how to partner with Shopify, which one thing I didn't mention, but a big key takeaway from that partnering with Shopify one was that they want you to deliver a campaign to them that's like fully fleshed out, not just like one specific marketing idea. They want a full thing of like, here's a whole set of stuff we can do for an entire month, a very specific angle and like exactly how you're going to deliver it. I think that was like probably an important takeaway from that topic, and I don't want to gatekeep. But I would have liked more talks like Deb's where it's not Shopify employees. So bringing in more experts from the community and getting to hear from them. There were a couple of those, but it felt like there were more that were like, just Shopify employees leading and talking versus, kind of pulling in these experts like Deb to hear like their perspectives and like their, I guess like their strategies on how they're approaching these things. So I would have loved to have like had a little bit more of that, I think, talking about how like important this community is and how good of a job they've done at creating a community. Like that's, that would have been like a prime opportunity for just like more community building. And then the last thing, which we all know, and this is just unfortunate, was obviously like people didn't get into certain talks. So the rooms were smaller. The space was very limited to like, maybe 40-ish people. So I only got into 2 talks the whole day. And I know a lot of people kind of had that same situation where they stood in line and then the room got at capacity and they didn't get into very many either. So that was like probably like my biggest gripe with the day. Was it just would have been nice, I think, to like plan around that a little bit more, knowing how many tickets were sold. Like, I know this is probably kind of an annoying thing to do, but it's like, based on how many tickets are sold, we know only 40 people are going to get into this talk. Like, let's do a part 2 of it in the afternoon where we run through like the same talk track or something like that. Oh my gosh. Sorry, guys.
She's booked and busy, man.
But yeah, it would have been nice to like, I don't know, maybe, yeah, just like repeat sessions or something like that. So if you didn't make it to the first one, at least there was like maybe an opportunity to hear it again in the afternoon or something like that.
Or record it, that's Go ahead, Nick.
I felt very similarly. Even in the like more technical talks, there was some stuff that was like great by Shopify employees, but I left them all wishing that I was also able to kind of join a talk that was from other apps, kind of like what is their secret sauce? Let's do like behind the scenes technical talks of how they're building these things, the way they're thinking about them, and not necessarily just the way Shopify is thinking about these things. It was great to kind of get the technical information in terms of like where Shopify is going with Polaris or Built for Shopify or some of these app themes. But I also want to see talks from other apps from their developers. How, like, let's do teardowns of like how they're using Polaris or where they're not using Polaris, and like trying to learn a bit more about these different technical apps, or these apps in the technical side, and not so much just a kind of boilerplate talk of here's the things we did, here's what we updated, but all just from Shopify's perspective. I want more of the app partner side. So it felt like a good evolution of that would be to involve a lot more talks that aren't even Shopify specific, but are maybe just still in the dev space.
Tectonic. That's why you guys got to go to that. Honestly, because that's exactly what I think was the piece missing. But it was there. So it's like if you went to both and you felt that bridge connected.
Sure.
But
you had this like lead into like then shifting focus from that to then Shopify. Yeah, that would make a lot more sense. Because a lot of the technical talks were, if not all of them that I sat in on, were from Shopify employees talking about what they're doing at Shopify as much as they could. That was the kind of the other thing about some of these sessions is I wish there was more, I guess, decision makers in these rooms, because it felt like a lot of times we would ask questions and all of the Shopify employees would look at each other in terms of like, I can't answer that the way that I want to answer that. So come talk to us later at like this booth, where it was like, I almost want them to have some, go ahead and just say like, we can talk about this openly, versus them trying to like see what they can and can't say just because of releasing info that maybe shouldn't be known, which I understand with, the secret sauce behind Shopify. You get devs in the room, they might say something that they're not supposed to, but sometimes those open conversations are kind of like nice to have, because a lot of times we're all dealing with the same issue. Even if you're at Shopify and these app partners, we're building on the same platform, so we all kind of understand those issues. It just felt like maybe there should have been a bit more awareness of what they could and couldn't answer, because it felt like they were maybe scared a lot of times to provide those things.
Yeah, I would say.
Oh, go ahead, Deb.
No, go ahead, Molly.
Well, I just have a closing thought that'll kind of probably wrap us up. So go ahead and comment on what Nick was saying there.
Okay. Well, just kind of maybe tying in, Nick, what you're saying also with Tina, and then my thoughts is I've been to all the Shopify events, the partner events, since 2016. And for me, it's about the connections that you make along the way. I think, one of my favorite years was the year that the power went out in San Francisco, and we were all kind of forced to skip talks and just kind of become friends outside and have some drinks. So I think if you're going to have rooms with only 40 people allowed, I think a way to offset that is to provide hangout opportunities within those areas for people that missed out on going. And then they could like get together and talk about, what they think the talk is about or their opinion. So like a little bit more of what Nick was saying is like getting the actual people that are doing the stuff behind the scenes to connect as a community and have talks within those hallways. Cause I felt like the way that it was situated was like you had the talks upstairs mostly, Downstairs was more for like the employees and like the larger scale things. And then off to the right or left was like the lunchroom or the area where people were sitting. It was almost like cafeteria style in a way. So like that's where you could sit and convene and talk. But either you're standing around or you're like, that's where you can like sit and have those like things. So what they've done in the past is they had like little areas where you could all sit together and like make friends and then, naturally have those kind of conversations that Nick was talking about. So I think that would be my only thing, is like providing a little bit more community within like the serious talks or the business side of it would have been cool. Yeah, that would be my takeaway. But go ahead, Molly. Sorry.
Well, I'm just sitting here smiling because I was even thinking 18 months ago, like the group of 5 of us sitting here talking about this topic and having like the comfortableness, you know what I mean? The familiarity with each other, and now having met in person, like, again, these events, for all the things, even when Nick was getting so annoyed, because in my past life I did events and I was like, oh, I would have done the coat check differently. Nope, wouldn't have scanned badges like that. Nope, that's not how I would do the queuing strategy into the room. And Nick's like, shut up, I don't care. But
I think we all agreed they should not have pre-printed name tags, and they should print them when you check in.
correct, it's just
Agreed.
silly.
Agreed.
It was just
Yeah.
a mess.
6,000 people pre-printed, not going to work. It just doesn't work.
Or your
But-
QR code goes to your LinkedIn profile or somewhere where people could connect with you afterwards.
Yes.
The amount of time I had to scan my LinkedIn thing was like, that's
Preach.
different.
It's just
Yeah.
the things like that. But again, Nick and I did talk to one of the event people, and they were an outside agency that they hired. So you think they would have had that down. But anyway, I just think these opportunities, to reinforce what I said earlier, the ecosystem, the ability for us to be together. I was even taking notes during this podcast. I was like, I need to ask Deb about that more. Or Tina said this, and I need to ask her about this more. But like this relationships, this ability for us to work together and be able to share ideas and have that relationship, like, damn, like I don't think you get this anywhere else in the world. And I'm an extrovert, and even sometimes these events wear me out, but they just give me such a perspective outside of the 4 walls of Lucky Orange HQ. And not that Nick and Sean aren't great, but it's so refreshing to hear other people going and seeing that you sit in a part of a bigger ecosystem that are actually doing real things in the real world. Like, that's just cool shit. And so it was a good event, and I finally got the rest I think I need to recover from it and, back at it. So just really grateful for all of you being there and exposing us and bringing us alongside you guys as you continue to grow too.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of our favorite parts, was seeing you. So we
great.
were really excited about that. And it's like seeing someone that you like a family member, like as soon as I saw you, I was like, oh, feels so familiar.
Yes,
and
totally.
Never met in real life, it's just,
Totally.
It's a long time coming. Felt really good. Wish that Sarah and Sean could have been there, but
I know. We'll get them on the list. Plug out to Danny for next year. This is our pitch. We'll make
For
sure he
sure.
listens through
yeah,
this too.
Danny, if you're listening.
Oh, he doesn't listen to this. Yeah. Well, if you're driving and listening to this and Molly was just talking and made you cry, please pull over and be safe. Deb, Tina, Molly, Nick, thank you so much. I'm glad it sounds like overall we had a great event. A lot more to come from Shopify, as is always. So I really appreciate your thoughts, and we'll have to do this again when Shopify drops another bomb for everybody to handle. But really, really thank you for carving out time. We're 3 minutes over our time. So Tina, you need to get to the Slacks. Deb, I know you have stuff to do. Molly and Nick, let's go pretend we're working somewhere. So thank you guys so much.
That was my joke throughout. People would be like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, I just crash parties.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Free
it's
drinks.
all good. It's
Also,
all
I
good.
promise they're not serious. It was literally my client being like, you get your Nintendo Switch today, because it just dropped. Not
Perfect.
serious at all.
Well, now you have that to look forward to. You've got to go. Tina's got to go gaming and, whatever.
I gotta go crash another party.
Perfect.
Yeah. Bottoms
Thank
up.
you guys so much. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having us
Thanks,
on,
guys.
Sean.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Lucky Orange Show. Before we go, if you haven't tried Lucky Orange yet, head over to www.luckyorange.com for a free 7-day trial of our leading conversion rate optimization toolkit. What's in that toolkit? Well, Let's start with session recordings and heat maps. With session recordings, you can watch a full playback of an entire visitor journey on your website. Everywhere they click, scroll, move, everything they do in your site, a full playback. So you can see what's getting in the way of conversions and what is getting people over that finish line to convert. With dynamic heat maps, you can see the average visitor behavior on a page. So you can see clicks, moves, and scrolls. You can see how far down the page the average visitor is scrolling. And if something is below that line, that means that more than 50% of visitors are not seeing that. Lucky Orange also offers tools like live chat, announcements, and surveys so that you can communicate with your website visitors in real time. So again, if you have not tried Lucky Orange or if you're not a user yet, head over to luckyorange.com, check it out, 7-day free trial with no credit card required. If you're a Shopify store owner, head over to the Shopify App Store to download the Lucky Orange app to your store today, as well as BigCommerce, HubSpot, Square, and many more. Check us out. Happy optimizing.